the Phantom Podcast. Enjoy the show.
Welcome everyone to the first episode of the Phantom Podcast. I'm your host, BrothaG, and joining me is Taternater
Heyo.
and Austin.
Hello.
In today's episode, we will be exploring the most creepiest internet urban legends to ever exist. So like I said before, the most creepiest urban legend, and you guys might know it, it is the Skinwalkers. Before you guys look it up on your Google, let me tell you guys right here. A Skinwalker is a mythical creature from Navajo culture, believed to be a witch or sorcery with the ability to transform into animals or take on human-like forms. I am terrified of that. Just imagine being a part of that culture and hearing that look for at the campfire, bro. How would you feel about that, Tater?
You know, I can imagine how, like, if I saw a Skinwalker or anything like that, I would be pretty freaked out. It would be terrifying.
If I were to see a Skinwalker, which I kind of believe I have, long story that involves a different time.
What?
I kind of believe that I have. I think I'd start like running.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna get into that your side of the story first, but I'm gonna explain to the audience what a Skinwalker really is, like the powers they got and things like that. Well, the main characteristics are shapeshifting. Skinwalkers are said to have the power to transform into different animals, such as coyotes or bears. Sometimes they can take on appearances of humans. Skinwalkers are not just shapeshifters. They are also believed to use their powers for dark purposes. They might harm people, curse others, or use the powers for evil gain. I mean, from all the information that me and Tater and Austin just gathered, these guys seem very powerful. And Austin, you said that you have encountered one before.
I believe so, yes.
And when was this?
So it was actually about, I want to say 6 or 7 months ago. I was walking down to the graveyard to come see my uncle because, rest in peace and all, but I was just going to check on his grave and stuff. It was about 9 o'clock. I was with my cousin Danny, and his brother Eric, which is in the United States National Guard. And we were walking down there. We start hearing stuff from like the trees and stuff because we live by like a whole forest. And we see a figure in the road. We definitely didn't think it was a person because who would be out at, I don't even know the time. It was like maybe 10, 11, 12 o'clock. And we see it just disappear. So we just turned back around. We were not going to, encounter it. And we just run home.
Was it like standing still, just looking at you?
It was just standing in the middle of the road.
Oh,
surrounded by.
Nah. I mean,
it was all surrounded by trees too, and there was nowhere to run.
Oh nah.
The other way.
Hell no, dude. My heart would be down to my feet, bro. I can't lie.
We also heard like howling from like a dog. Sometime later.
I mean, they do say that people hear strange sounds. Like they could like imitate different noises, like humans, animals, things like that. So
I also caught a recording of kind of what it sounded like.
We can play for the audience in post-production, man. You know what I'm saying? That's the beauty of it. I don't want to hear that
I'll
though.
Find it. Be able to turn all the way up, and you might not be able to totally hear it, but it sounds like dogs barking. And that clip I caught was after I arrived back to my house.
I don't want to know what you felt like, but that was hell no. How about you, Tater? Have you like found one before or encountered?
Might have. So I was outside on my trampoline. I actually caught it on recording, by the way. I was outside on my trampoline, and I was videoing my dog or whatever, and then I hear this like howling in the distance, you know, and it wasn't like normal howling. It was almost like a mixture of like whining and howling. It was very creepy. After I heard that, I went back inside. I didn't think anything of it until I watched the recording again. It wasn't like I saw anything, but you'll definitely have to turn the volume way up. If I can find the recording, I could totally send it.
Great Pyrenees are one of the best listeners ever.
A Skinwalker is a very dangerous shapeshifter, bro. So, like, just imagine, like, walking down the street, like, it could be anywhere, like on some Men in Black type of stuff. But we do have a story for here from the one and only Reddit, the trusty old Reddit. So, you guys have the story as well, so we can popcorn read. Sound fun? No?
Sweet. I got a chocolate bar right beside me. I'm ready.
And Big Backs are ready.
I got the brand new Coca-Cola.
Well, this story is called The Rake. It starts off, my father told me a story once, and I'll never forget it for a few reasons. I think it's the first story he told me as a child. It's also a story of how my grandfather died. But honestly, that isn't the reason. You hear stories on TV, or sometimes you overhear something in public places. People talk about ghosts and aliens, and then you think to yourself, that isn't real. They're making it up, or mistaken, or they're crazy. Something like that, you don't just believe it until something happens. Something that brings it all together, connects the dots in a way that you don't just think of before. Maybe it happens to you, or maybe you hear the same story again and again and again, happening to different people. It doesn't take long for the world to become a bit bigger than you thought. As I said, this is a story my father told me, and I never believed it, even though he swore up and down that it was true. It wasn't until I started clicking around the internet and I started to believe. I started to hear other stories just like the one my father told me. It didn't take me long to believe in the rake. That's not what my father called it, of course. He never used the internet in his life. He wouldn't know what the consequences have taken to naming it. When he chose to call it something other than it or that thing, he called it Skinwalker. As the old Navajo tale his grandfather told me. But I'll tell you the story the way he told me to.
We were out hunting one night, killing coyotes for $50 a skin. We lived on a dairy farm in Ohio, and sometimes they'd kill a calf. We'd do it every night because we needed the money. Sometimes, while we're out, we'd come upon a deer and kill it. Our landlord didn't mind, and it could feed our family for a few nights and save us some money. We were done making our rounds and heading home, walking because we didn't have a car or a four-wheeler back then. We cut through the woods, and that's when we came upon it. Blood everywhere, splattered on the trees, and the grass, in the creek, everywhere.
At first, we figured it was a pack of coyotes. We'd seen it sometimes. They scavenged and then they start hunting deer or cattle. The worst was when they bred the feral dogs. But this wasn't like that. When a pack of dogs, wolves, or coyotes attack something, they do it right. They'll pick one that's weak, sick, old, or just small. They hunt it, draw it into a corner someplace they can't get out of. And then they'll run it right into the biggest one, the alpha. And that deer will never see that alpha. They might hear it, but they won't see it. it'll just notice that its throat is gone. And then it will drop dead. It's quick. It's clean. That wasn't what happened here. Something had run up on a den of deers. Coyotes won't attack a den. The wolves neither, because they'd get too much of a fight. There were 3 bodies, just torn apart. You'd see a head here, a leg there, a torso over there. Predators don't do that. They don't leave behind scraps. Whatever had done this, hadn't done it for food. They had done it for fun.
But we didn't know that. We saw a bunch of carcasses, and we thought it was just something that we had to take care of. Nothing was supposed to be awake, but they weren't just awake, they were moving. I saw flocks of birds that fly straight into trees, trying to get out of there. We came upon a pack of coyotes, nearly shot one a couple.
That maybe whatever we're tracking wasn't something we were supposed to see, and it wasn't something we could kill. I don't know why we didn't just go home. I guess we were curious. I think that my dad's nature to go towards trouble, to fight, and knowing I knew about what my father did during the war, my nature was to stay close to him. We finally got into an open valley. It was normally a soy field, but it wasn't in season. So it was just flat dirt. We saw the tracks then. A lot of the animals fleeing. The forest had paved over the land. But where the deer blood was, nothing had taken a single step. Like they were leaving for us to find the tracks were shallow. Whatever it was, couldn't have weighed more than 100 pounds. But that didn't mean much. A bobcat weighing around 40 pounds nearly tore my damn throat at once. And all that means is that it's quick, and it's hard to hit. So we followed the tracks, and it didn't take long for us to find where it was. There was an old schoolhouse that sat on top of a hill. Half of it had been ripped up by a tornado, and nobody lived there. Not for a long time. We caught homeless people in there sometimes, or druggies looking for a safe place to shoot up. We figured that maybe that was it. Maybe it was just some sick kid riding a high. But we didn't think that for long.
We got within 50 yards, and then we heard the noise. A screeching kind of sound. It was sort of made up of 2 different sounds. One high-pitched screech and another low-pitched growl. It was making both at the same time. We got within 20 yards, then we heard the sound. I can remember thinking that it sounded like paper being torn apart while someone was swinging water into a bucket back and forth. I had to stay behind him because we were about to corner it, especially when it's a predator. But we could tell by its tracks that it was just one. He told me it was probably a single-feral dog, probably a rabbit. Plan was to sneak up on it while it was eating, shoot it, and then keep shooting until it didn't move anymore. Then slit its throat if it got to Dad. If it did, it was my job to shoot or stab to get it off him. So he walks up. I'm right behind him, just a tad to his side so I can see what it is. I wish to this day I hadn't. It was leaning over a carcass, tearing off its flesh and throwing it. There's blood all over the brick, glistening in the moonlight. It's pale white human looking, but not quite human. It had arms and legs like a human, but it sat like a monkey, hunched over. Its hands weren't normal. It had long fingers with claws at the end.
Okay, so we just got done reading this big ass part of the chunk of the story. Only half of it though. So we're gonna stop right here and give our analysis and our thoughts on this right quick. So starting with Taternater and then Austin. So Tater and Austin, how did you like interpret this story so far?
So, like, it's terrifying. I might have peed a little. When we got to the part about, like, what the Skinwalker looked like, bro, I'm not gonna lie, I got some goosebumps. Some pretty hard goosebumps. Like, I have a pretty, I want to say, I mean, everybody has a pretty good imagination if they really use it, but, like, I just imagine what the monster would look like, and it's great. It's crazy, bro. And imagining
How
all
did you
the,
envision it?
I envision it like, what's the guy from Lord of the Rings that's like my precious? I imagine
That's that one goblin. I forget what his name is.
the goblin from Lord of the Rings, and the guy with no nose from Harry Potter. That's how I imagined it. Like if they had like a baby.
So that tiny? You imagine all of that happening. Everybody get torn to pieces.
No, I think it's
his name is
think of it
Gollum.
like as Gollum, same size as
Gollum.
Gollum. Skinwalkers can change your sizes, so yeah, I don't know how tall it could be.
All right, Austin, since you did say that you almost had, or you did have an experience, how did this like story like line up to that?
As I said, we were walking and stuff. We started hearing noises in the trees, in the bushes around us, and it wasn't just ruffling and stuff. It was like imagine a little kid like kind of screaming, but far away. And we thought it was just a kid because I mean it's near a campground. No, we thought it was a kid, so we started walking towards it. 2 seconds later, as soon as we get off the road, we hear a giant growling from a dog. So we thought it'd be smart just to book it out of there before anything happens. And then a few months later, actually it was this February, I captured a recording of what sounded like dogs barking, but I'm not too sure it was dogs. So that's my.
So we see that, and my dad hesitates. He wasn't about to fire on a person, so he clears his throat to try to get it off. I swear to God, all the noise just ceased. I ain't never heard true silence before that. Not after it, but the 2 seconds, nothing made any noise, which made it all the louder. Then it turned around, made this shrill cry, jumped on my dad. He got a shot off. Think he missed. If he hit thing, it didn't mind it, but it was on him, tearing parts of him off. But it was on him. Bro! But it was on him, tearing parts of him off. I started shooting it with a 22 point blank, but it barely bled. I got off 5 rounds, and then I started hitting it with the gun, but it wasn't budging. It didn't even register.
Clap it out.
INER. What? Regester? Am I saying that right?
Where are we?
We're right under. So he walks up, and I'm right behind him. We're on the next line.
So he walks. I think it is.
Register. Sorry.
Oh, it's register.
Register. Okay. I started hitting him with the gun, but it wasn't budging. It didn't even register that I was there. It clawed at my dad, taking off bits of his flesh. It started on his torso, ripping off the skin, and then it moved up. It tore off his throat, his nose, his eyes, his scalp. It scalped him. Then it started digging in the ripping off the bottom half of his jaw. The little bones in that tube in your neck. Then his ribs. I don't exactly remember what happened, but somehow my dad's knife ends up in the thing's shoulder. Then my dad ends up on my back. I'm running, and by God, I'm running faster than I ever ran before or after. And I know it's following me. I end up back in the woods opposite of ones we've been in. I'm heading towards my landlord's house because it's a half of a mile away. I can hear this thing screeching and moaning. I hear the tree branches crack and get thrown around. It sounds like something taking an axe to every single tree I pass. It's cracking so loud and often. It's cracking so loud and often, but I'm just not looking back. Finally, I trip onto gravel. I look up, and there's my landlord and a bunch of his buddies drinking around the campfire. I scream and cry, and they come over. I'm telling them to call an ambulance. And they look at me, and I never forget what he said.
What's on your back?
He asked me, and just as he said it, he saw one of those god-awful flannel shirts my dad wore everywhere. It was what was left of my dad, most of his head, his torso, but nothing after the waist. Suddenly, we hear it screeching, and he grabs me. My dad gets thrown to the ground, and I'm fighting him, crying, because I think we can still save him, somehow. But my dad had been gone before I even picked him up. He was to pick me up and throw me inside before I come with him. He and his buddies were all inside, and they're locking the doors. And they're locking the doors and getting guns ready. The landlord looks at me, asking what happened. But I just don't know what to tell him. He pieced enough of it all together to understand what there was something dangerous up there. He pieced enough of it all together to understand that there were something dangerous out there.
All the lights in the house are on, and someone calls the cops. And they'll be there in 15 minutes. We look outside and see it walk in front of the fire that they made. I don't know what it is. One of them says it looks like an ape, and at least through the window, we shoot at it, but it ain't do a thing. It ain't the thing. It's my landlord's dog. Just a body though, not his head or legs. And we start pushing things in front of the door and windows when we hear something in the garage. I remember one of his friends saying that the door will open, and we hear metal and glass just getting ripped apart. We put a couch and a TV in front of the door to the garage. It banged around some more, but then it got quiet, not silent, like it did before. We could hear it move around some, and the guys were talking, making sure the guns were ready. Someone hands me the pistol, and no sooner did I cock the hammer back, and then we heard something shatter upstairs. Then we heard it screeching again, except it was louder, and it didn't echo and fade out because it was inside with us. We all rushed to the one door leading upstairs, and we all rushed into the one door leading upstairs, and we all got into it just as the thing did. It opened it just a bit, and 4 or 5 men just slammed into it. He got his hands though. Someone with a shotgun took care of that. Put the barrel right up to his waist and pulled the trigger. Boom. Cut his hands right clean off. That only made it angry. It started pushing on the door, clawing. We were on one side, pushing as the best as we could. And it was the other doing the same. The door just wasn't gonna hold. Someone tells us to keep our hands down. Suddenly, the top half of the door just gone, completely. My ears are ringing, and there are splinters everywhere. 2 or 3 of them just uploaded on the door. I really didn't know where it went after that. The police showed up. I was still glued to the door. That was what was left of it.
And the sun was up before they got me off it. They put me in the hospital for a while, and a lot of people talked to me, but I didn't talk back. Not for a long, long time. Then we got back home. I got a job from the landlord working on the farm. We didn't talk much, not about that thing, but I signed up for the army when I was 19, and he sat me down to drink some scotch as I send off. I asked him right away what the police told him. The story they went with was a wild animal, probably a wolf or a bear that had migrated north or something. I asked him about how they could say that when they had the hand. He looks at me stunned. He tells me that hand never made it back to the station. The cop who had it and his car wrecked and drove into a tree, died on impact. The hand was never found, probably taken away by an animal. And the cops, and they were in knowledge. The hand never existed at all. Said it simply was the paw of a bear that looked like a human hand. I never ended up talking to that landlord again. I guess he went missing when I was in basic. And the cops never found him. They said he owed some people some money and just ran away. But I don't think it's that simple. I never went back to those woods. I couldn't even if I had the whole goddamn US Army at my back. And that was my father's story. Or Skinwalker. I'm still not sure what to think. But as I grew up older and then my mother died, I don't think my father felt that he had anything left. And he might as well settle old scores. He went back into those woods, I guess, and he never came back. The FBI was called, and they did a show and dance for everyone involved. But I knew that they weren't really looking, and they never did find him.
Alright, without further ado, make sure you guys give you guys his opinion about the Rake story. And if you guys have any experiences with the Skinwalkers in your own life or your family members, make sure you comment down below it. And yeah, without further ado, that was the first ever episode of the Phantom Podcast, and hope you guys see you soon. Yeah, make sure we go live every Saturday at 7:45 p.m. Eastern time, and make sure to join our Discord. The link will be in the description down below. For more information about the podcast, the Phantom Podcast, visit goldenagestudios.site. Until next time, keep it spooky.